2, 1. Let's go. It's time to Dad Up. Welcome to the Dad Up Podcast, the podcast for dads about dads being dads. Get ready for exciting guests talking about their experiences of parenting, the good and the not so good. Bang that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode, and let's get started. Here is your host, Bryan Ward.
Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm excited for the guest that I have on. His name is Adam Farrell, and he has an interesting story, and I'm excited to dive right in. So I wanted to welcome Adam to the show. Welcome to the show, brother.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Honestly, you and I have kind of connected on social media and all that, but I don't really know much about you. So I know that you're a fitness coach and you're a health coach for, you have it specifically for divorced dads, but I kind of want to dive into that. So kind of want to dive into your backstory, a little bit about Adam, so that my listeners can kind of get a better understanding of who you are.
For sure. Grew up Corpus Christi, Texas. In South Texas, born and raised. Still live here today. Athletic kid, played a bunch of sports in through elementary school up into high school. Had a really great high school coach who influenced my life, gave me a lot of structure and discipline. Moved on from that and lost a lot of that structure and discipline. Didn't do too well in college. So struggled a bit in college. Had to move back home but still continued in college, and then found another avenue within athletics, but more on the recreational side, and worked for the rec sports department at the university that I was at. Did that for about 5.5 years before starting my business. So I have a brick and mortar business also, in personal training and fitness and sports performance. And so fitness and athletics and movement have always been a part of my life. And I went through a divorce about 2 years ago. Like most other guys, really struggled, and women really struggled with that. Still have those times still today, but getting through it. But one of the things that I've known throughout my life, and even when I was struggling in college and had to move back home, was working out and exercise really helped my brain and my mind. And I recognized that at the age of 19, 20 years old. And I know today now as a professional that the more we move, the better we're going to feel. And there's a lot of dads and a lot of pain going through this process, whether they're, just beginning the process of going through a divorce to, their years in and still struggling with it. And the impact that has on them, the impact that has on their kids, the impact that it can even have on the community, just because they may have lost a leader that's gone through that process and they are still struggling. And so I've created an outlet, a private Facebook page called the Resilient Dads Group, for dads to find a positive, healthy place that they can share and vent, and be encouraged by other dads that have gone through the process or are in it. And some are thriving, some are not thriving and are struggling. But, together we can kind of get through it in a better way, rather than isolating ourselves and being on our own.
Yeah. Okay, good. We're going to dive into that, but I want to know how many kids you have. What are their ages?
Sure. I've got a 14-year-old daughter. She just started her freshman year
cool.
In high school. She plays volleyball. And I have an 11-year-old son. He just started middle school. And at the time of this, he was just positively diagnosed with COVID 2 days ago. And we're isolating, we're quarantining at the moment, which is, a whole nother reality to where we are right now. And I can kind of talk a little bit about, rules that I had set up that as a dad now I have to bend a little bit to, make it more comfortable for him and for my daughter, and kind of structure that I had in place. But, reality things you have to do as a dad that, usually you might be a little more structured about. You kind of have to change to go along with what the circumstances are.
Right. How's he feeling?
He's good. He's got a little bit of a headache. Stomach's bothering him a little bit. He's definitely has enough lung capacity to yell at his friends on Fortnite. So he's not hurting too bad. His appetite's off a little bit, but I think he's enjoying the time that he's getting to play on his video games and whatnot.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind me asking, are you guys vaccinated, or are you and your daughter vaccinated at least?
So I am, and my kids are not.
Okay.
My son was too young to, and my daughter's kind of gone back and forth about the vaccine. And yeah, it's a discussion that is ongoing.
So he's going to be, excuse me, he's going to be in quarantine for a little bit. So he'll get
for the next week.
He'll get some, I guess, thumb exercises on the Fortnite game. But are they in school yet? Or
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, actually, they just started school last week. So they started on Tuesday, and then they came to my house Wednesday night. He woke up Thursday morning not feeling good. I thought it was a stomach bug. I was like, we'll just get him tested anyways. Sure enough.
Wow.
He had COVID. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a unique time.
Yeah. Well, thankfully he's young and healthy, and so he'll be fine. I'm sure of it. But just got to stay quarantined and stay safe for you guys, you and your daughter at least, to stay kind of away from him as much as possible. But how does that transition? And we're talking about, you've been divorced now for 2 years. How are you and your spouse doing as far as the communication, as far as your level of, I guess, getting along? And then also, how does him being testing positive for COVID, how does that impact, like, you guys, him living at both your guys' houses?
Yeah. So it was interesting at first, because, well, I mean, it's interesting, just because, so the structure is that they come over to my house on Wednesday and go back to her house on Sunday. But at the same time, she got tested just to make sure that she wasn't, because she was exposed. But it's, what are the rules, right? And then what's reality? So the rules say he goes back on Sunday. Reality is he's going to need to quarantine with me till probably the following Sunday. And that's going to be the safest thing for everybody. And so we're both in agreement on that.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just, opening up communication to not let our egos and the kids get in, putting the kids priority first rather than what necessarily we want. And what's going to be safest for them is pretty much is the priority at this point.
So you guys have a pretty good relationship, even though, you've gone through this divorce, and I'm sure, divorce is hard. I have not experienced it, but I have a lot of friends and, that have, and I know that it can be a tough struggle, not only for the adults, but more importantly, the kids. You and your ex-wife have a good relationship as far as that goes?
It's a working relationship. Yeah. I mean, we make it work, and we try and put the kids as the priority, so that it's not about our egos and so much as what we necessarily want, but what's going to be best for our kids. And it's, it's not easy. It's a struggle. And, there's a lot of growing up and maturity that I'll just speak for myself that I have to do to make that work. And I don't always do it all that well. I struggle with that, but at the same time, it's, going back to what's going to be in the best interest of our kids.
Yeah. Now let's talk about your coaching now. So you've been in fitness for a long time, and you've coached and things like that. Now, I know that your focus is for divorced dads. Why is that? Why do you focus on, or do you focus on, you work with everybody? It's just, your focus is divorced dads. So why do you think you've gone that route?
Sure. So, couple things. Yeah. So I've got male and female clients. Like I've had a personal training business for the past 15 years. And it wasn't until, so I started doing online health coaching and fitness coaching, I want to say the end of 2019. Yeah, the end of 2019. And I had already been divorced, and I was, looking to who I could serve best. Like where can I relate to other people best? And what have I been through in my life that I can also, I think, lend some assistance to that might be unique, rather than just, general population. And so I've been fortunate enough going through my divorce process. I had some really great men show up, dads, and married, divorced, just some really strong men that showed up during that time to help me get through that process. And I keep saying the word process because it's ongoing. It's not going to stop. And people sometimes get upset. Well, why are you targeting or why are you identifying just with divorced dads? They're single dads or they're dads but I think once you've been through a divorce, like you get it, like it's an upheaval of your life that is unlike any other thing that you're going to go through. And there's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of just hard stuff. I was going to use another word, but that you go through that you don't know unless you go through it. And so I wanted to be able to reach a group that I could empathize with, that I could relate to, they could relate to me. And it's not just about sets and reps and eating your broccoli and your chicken, but it's like, let's create a new identity for yourself that's bigger than just fitness or bigger than just getting a six pack. It's like, how am I going to move forward in a healthy way into the next chapter of my life? And so the suicide rate for divorced men versus divorced women is like 9 times. Mm. And so that's way too high. And I know I'm not going to have a huge impact on that, but I've talked to guys who had the gun in their mouth and they were there. By the grace of God, they didn't pull the trigger. But they get to that point. And if I can talk to somebody or help them come out of depression by working out again or by eating better or seeing themselves in a different light, then that's part of what I'm doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. I know that, it can be tough for dads that are in a relationship with their spouse and have kids involved to go through something like a divorce. Obviously, divorce is something that we as dads don't want to experience. We don't want our kids to have to deal with it. What lessons, if you were to talk to dads out there that may be going through this or about to go through it or have gone through it, what lessons would you say you've learned in this journey or this chapter that you've gone through?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say communication with your kids, but age appropriate communication with your kids is crucial. I definitely struggled with that, letting my kids know what's going on in my life. I tend to not share as much. I think some might go the other direction, and I think it's a learning process as well, like what's appropriate, what's not. One thing, definitely not throwing your ex under the bus or speaking ill of her, I think goes a huge way. Showing appreciation and concern for your ex in front of your kids, with your kids, regardless of how you feel. I think just going forwards is the best practice. Even if it's not reciprocated on the other side, taking the high road at every opportunity. I think is crucial. And then understanding like your kids, I mean, their lives are just been turned upside down as well.
Right.
So it's not just about you anymore. It's about what they have to go through. And they're going in between different houses. They have different sets of clothes. It's like their life's been turned upside down just as much as yours has. And, you know, in some instances, it's really when parents aren't behaving maturely, it just really trickles down to the kids and puts a huge burden on them. And I've worked with and talked with a bunch of dads that it's like the kids get stuck.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's just to be as strong as we can and not make it about us and make it about the kids as much as possible. And then communicate how much you love your kids and how much you want to spend time with them. And when you have time with them, be as present as possible. You know, everyone talks about putting the phone down. That's probably the simplest, but maybe not the easiest thing to do, is just to be present with your kids and give them as much time and attention as possible.
Yeah, I think it's so important when, as I said, I have not gone through a divorce, but just knowing that the people that I have experienced in my life that have gone through it, the one thing that I think about are the kids. I don't think about what the adults are going through, because listen, you guys are adults. You guys will learn how to manage and get through things. Kids don't know how to manage that. Kids don't know how to go through, they don't understand that. So I think it's so important for us, as you know, if there's a dad out there that's listening to this that may be going through or about to go through a divorce, put your kids first and put your ego aside. That's hard for dads to do. Put the ego aside and do what's best for the kids. Don't think about yourself. Don't even think about what's best for your spouse or ex-spouse. Think about your kids, because they're the ones that are still growing. They're the ones that are still developing. They're the ones that are still learning. And so it's important that is your priority. Your kids are your priority. So I'm glad that you said that. Now I wanted to talk about kind of, obviously, maybe regrets that you may have had in this whole process, because I think that's important for dads to also understand. I know we talk about, the lessons you've learned and how we need to learn to put our kids first. And that should be in any, whether we're divorced or not, putting your kids first should always be a priority. But what kind of regrets do you have, or do you have any in this process? Obviously, maybe a regret of wishing that you and your spouse could have worked it out. That may be one. But what is there any regrets that you may have?
Yeah, I mean, communication, I think, is the biggest one. I think just a lack of communication between myself with my ex. And then I think also with my kids, and just letting them know, what, again, age appropriately, what's going on.
Are you open with them about everything? I mean, they are older, so they kind of have an understanding of what's going on. Are you pretty open with them, or are there some things you just kind of, that's none of their business. I don't need to go there with them.
Yeah. So it just kind of depends on the situation, and what it is, and what's going on, in life. Like between their mom and I, like there's some stuff that we don't necessarily talk about with them, just with the divorce, and then, our own stuff that we're working through. But in terms of like school and life and those decisions, that sort of stuff, like all of that's open and that's on the table. So other regrets, I mean, obviously, like, yeah, I mean, just the whole divorce thing and the guilt that goes along with that, and not succeeding and failing. But at the same time, it's like looking for lessons that can be taught out of how we can make those obstacles, things that didn't work out, be lessons for them going forwards. And what a healthy relationship looks like versus not a healthy relationship looks like. And using myself as an example, so that they don't make the same mistakes, or look for a partner that is going to say, do, or be a particular way. And now as they're getting older, like talking about relationships and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what to expect. So it's more of, I don't know if I'd say regrets, is more just learning opportunities that I can put in front of my kids now, like you said, as they're getting older.
Yeah, I think, with your daughter, she's 14 now. She's starting to get to that age where she's gonna start having, I guess, interest in boys, and, that you got that whole dynamic that you're about to go through, that whole chapter of her life that she's about to go through. And, with the struggles that you and your ex have had, hopefully the communication, or the level of communication with your daughter, is that, and it's pointing to how important maintaining strong relationships, is or are. And it's something that, we struggle with just as parents in general, when our kids have these outside relationships, how important it is to continue to teach them respect, and those kinds of things. So I think that's important. I think, for you as a dad, and, your spouse or your ex-spouse as well, that you guys got to continue that open communication with her, and teaching her that, hey, you and your mom and I didn't, we couldn't kind of work things out, but it doesn't always work that way. There's important ways, or I guess there's structures that you need to know, or things you need to learn to maintain relationships and maintain a healthy relationship. The respect to how you treat, whether it's a boyfriend, or for a boy, a girlfriend, or vice versa, so it's all important. So I'm glad that you shared that. Go ahead.
And I think, you mentioned the word respect. I think something else that we also try and focus on is respect for yourself.
Absolutely.
And what's appropriate for them, and that's okay. That they can have respect for themselves, and they can say, no, that's not going to work for me. And fortunately, we have a very smart daughter who does not mind telling you what she thinks. And she's been brought up that way. So we really encourage her to continue that behavior and that way of thinking. So we're pretty fortunate in that regard. And my ex-spouse is the same way as well. Like, she's very strong, and willing to, speak what's important to her. And I think she's passed that down to our daughter as well. And so I get to have the unique experience of, talking to her about boys and their expectations, and her being a strong young woman, and she has her own boundaries that she can set up for herself, and kind of and all of that is okay to have those. So it's an interesting time, and it's a fun time for us right now, and we're just going to continue doing that same behavior with her.
Awesome. Well, let me ask you one more question. Thinking about, maybe the challenges your kids are going through, is there a level of communication with your ex that if your kids are struggling with something, and maybe it's something that really requires both of your input, meaning you and your ex, your guys' input with the kids, can you guys sit down together and talk to them, or do you guys keep that pretty separate? Because I think that's the reason I bring that up is because I think it's super important that, especially if our kids are struggling, maybe they're getting, I don't know, I'm just using an example, but maybe they're getting bullied at school, or, maybe they're starting to do things that, maybe they stole something, or they're hanging out with the wrong crowd. I mean, I would think that even though you guys are separated, I would think that as parents, it's important that you both sit down together with the kids. Do you feel the same, or is that something you guys do?
Yeah. So fortunately, we haven't had really. We've been divorced 2 years now, and haven't had any of major issues come up. other than like here recently, like the COVID thing. And so, yeah, we all had to get together and we had to talk about what we were going to do going forwards. And we were in her driveway, yesterday afternoon, the day before, like trying to hash it all out. Who was going to go where, who's getting tested when. So yeah, I mean, two minds are better than one. And, you know, again, putting our egos aside and what necessarily we want, what our kid, what's going to be best and needed for the kids, is in my situation is probably is easier. Man, there's some hard situations out there that it's not that easy. Really just some tough struggling dads and, you know, moms. But yes, I agree 100% that if you can get on the same page and make the kids the priority and not ourselves, our egos, or our situation, or our timetable, or whatever, that's hands down the best solution every time.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, listen, Adam, thank you very much for being on the show, brother. I really appreciate it. Where can my listeners find you if they want to look you up, learn a little bit more about you? What's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, so two places, Adam Farrell on Facebook, and then on Instagram, The Resilient Dad on Facebook, or I'm sorry, on Instagram.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you being on. It's been a pleasure. I'm glad we gotten a chance to know each other, and I'll keep your son in my prayers for speedy recovery, and look forward to staying in touch with you.
Likewise. I appreciate what you do, Bryan.
Thank you guys, everybody, for watching, listening to another episode of Dad Up. Appreciate it. Make sure you guys subscribe. Hit the like button when you guys see the episode that's on my social media. But make sure you guys subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review. I'd love you guys' feedback, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Dad Up.
Thanks for listening to the Dad Up podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next weekly episode. While you're at it, leave a rating and review. And if you know someone this show can help, be sure to share it with them. Want to learn more? Check out the website at daduptribe.com or leave Bryan a message on Instagram at daduppodcast.